Hey, natural science students, it's Mr. Frida. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet because I know that I promised you no homework. But with the school flooding today, we had exceptional circumstances, and we can't just pretend like we are not having class at all just because the school flooded. And so I just want to take about 15 minutes or so, hopefully less, to take you through some of the basics of what we would have done in large group today to set you up for understanding how natural science works. Rather than having a point system or a grading system that is based upon the types of things that you do in class, I would rather have you graded in this class on your dimensions of thinking that you can use to improve. And on the screen right here, we have some of those dimensions of thinking, and I will show all of them to you before we're done with this video. The 6 that I've starred that you can see right now are the ones that we will reference most often in natural science. It's not like the other ones aren't important, but the 6 that I've starred are the most important. And so let's just work our way down the list so that you can have an understanding of what these means. This is what I'm going to be grading all of your assignments on for the entirety of the year. I will be grading you based upon your improvement on these critical thinking standards. So starting at the top of the list, there are some questions that are written down here that can be kind of confusing, and so I tried to write in some notes that will make it a little easier for you to understand it. So first intellectual standard in scientific thinking is clarity. Clarity basically means, is it clear? Can you read it and understand it? And this is things like the words that you choose and grammar and whether or not I can read your handwriting or whether or not you need to type something. Clarity is super important for describing what you know. Next up, we have accuracy. Accuracy is something right or wrong? Is something correct or incorrect? We do encounter some of that in a science course like natural science, but remember how I said in the first day of class that this class is going to be more about ideas than it is about facts, and so we're going to make sure that the accuracy is there, but I'm going to be more interested in some of the other standards that are coming up. Next is precision. Precision is basically level of detail. Like, for example, if a recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of something and you only put 1 teaspoon in, that's going to be a big problem. Next up, relevance. Sometimes when we're investigating a problem, there are some parts to the problem that don't even matter at all for a specific problem. That's going to be an issue of relevance. We only want to be talking about what's relevant to a particular problem. Depth. Depth is when we get really complex with a problem. Like, what steps do we have to go into in order to understand something fully? How complex can something get? Depth is going to be something that you're really going to want to push for in this class if you want to shoot for an A or a B. Depth is going to be one of the things that will be expected. And then a companion to depth is breadth, or how broad your thinking is on something. And breadth just means that you're considering different opinions or different points of view for a problem. What would different people think about something? How might a doctor think about something differently from a firefighter or from a teacher or from a student? Next up, what you can see at the bottom of this list is logic. Logic is basically, does it make sense? Does it follow the rules of logic? Continuing on down the list, I'm going to lift it up a little bit. We have significance and fairness. Significance is, for some problems, there may be things that they all matter for the problem, but some of them might matter more. In other words, we're concerned about their significance, how much they matter for a particular problem. And then fairness is, are you having your own personal prejudices or biases get in the way of you thinking about something? Like, are you ignoring some facts just because you don't like them? And so these are the critical thinking standards that I'm going to be using to grade you on almost everything that happens in Natty Sci this year. I have a little bit of practice for us to do, and what I'd like to do with this is I'm going to show you some examples. I'm going to show you 3 sentences. And then for each of those sentences, it's going to fall into one of these 3 categories for the critical thinking standards. I'll read the sentences for you, and then I'd encourage you to pause the video after I read these to you and try to figure out, for example, in this one, is logic, fairness, or clarity. One of these sentences represents an issue of clarity, one of them represents an issue of logic, and one of them represents an issue of fairness. So let's read the sentences. The first one is, I need to report the facts of using pesticides on fruits and vegetables, even though I don't think they should be used at all. The next sentence, I need to know if it makes sense that temperature stayed the same while heating the sample. Is that logic, fairness, or clarity? And then I need to fully explain my reasoning behind the decision I made so that other people understand. Is that an example of logic, fairness, or clarity? And so I'd encourage you to pause the video right now, and when you come back to it, we'll talk a little bit about what would be what. Welcome back. Okay, so I need to report the facts of using pesticides even though I think they shouldn't be used at all. Now, when I look at this sentence, I think, well, this person has an opinion, but they're reminding themselves that they have to look at all the facts even if they have an opinion about something. And so this is an issue of fairness. Are you being fair in evaluating a problem? And I'm not going to do it here because I want to keep the video short, but you could think of an explanation as to how we decided that this is an example of fairness. And I'll say this for all these examples. Next, I need to know if it makes sense that temperature stayed the same while heating the sample. Well, key words here for our explanation is makes sense. Okay, and makes sense is an issue. Is it logical? Does it make sense that temperature would rise when you heat the sample for an experiment? Now, obviously by process of elimination, this last one has to be clarity, but let's think about why it's an example of clarity. I need to fully explain my reasoning behind my decision so that other people understand. Well, clarity is an issue of whether or not someone else understands what you're saying. If you can't describe to someone what you're thinking, we don't really have evidence that your thinking is in a mindset that will be able to solve a problem. That's some good evidence as to whether you're prepared to solve the problem. Okay, let's do another set. Adjust the camera here slightly. This set is going to be breadth, depth, or relevance. When studying the development of the polio vaccine, I don't just consider the opinions of scientists, but also historians, doctors, and everyday citizens. Next sentence. I don't need to examine my data about forests when I want to answer a question about prairies. Last one, I can't just say that all teenagers want to be popular because the issue is much more complex than that. So if you'd like, pause the video, think about what each sentence would refer to out of those three choices, breadth, depth, or relevance, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, welcome back. The first one, when studying the development of the polio vaccine, I don't just consider the opinions of scientists, but also historians, doctors, everyday citizens. Look at this, we're exploring multiple or considering multiple different opinions. That is an issue of breadth. Do we have broad thinking? We're considering many different perspectives on an issue. Next sentence, I don't need to examine my data about forests when I want to answer a question about prairies. Now, knowing something about forests could matter because sometimes forests border prairies. So this is an issue of relevance. We only want to focus on what is going to be important for the particular question that we are investigating. Is it relevant for the particular question that we're investigating? And then the last one, I don't just say that all teenagers want to be popular because the issue is much more complex than that. Okay? Now, by process of elimination, we can know that this is depth, but the reason why it is depth is because, because you're a teenager, teenagers are complex beings. You're human beings. You have a lot of different aspects of things that you like or dislike or that bother you or don't bother you. And so whenever we're thinking about how complex or deep a problem is, that is an issue of depth. All right, one more and then I'll let you off the hook. Okay? Logic, accuracy, or significance. I can say that the world is a sphere, but I can't say that it is flat. It is important to write my bank account number on the form at the bank, but it probably doesn't matter that I write it in blue ink. If a pair of headphones cost $10.76 with tax, and I hand the store employee $10.70, they're not going to let me have the headphones. Pause the video if you would like to think about them. Okay, welcome back. I can say that the world is a sphere, but I can't say that if it's flat. Folks, if you say that Earth is flat, that is an issue of being correct or incorrect. So that is an issue of accuracy. It's important to write my bank account number on the form, but it's not important that I write it in blue ink. I mean, you could write it in black ink and they'd still accept it. That is an issue of significance. Okay, it's not significant to going to the bank and getting money withdrawn what color ink you use in most cases. And then finally, if you don't hand the store employee enough money, they're not going to give you the headphones. That is an issue. It's written as logic up here, but I think that I could also make a case for precision here. Whoops, it would probably help if I spelled it correctly. I got this. I can do it. Precision. Okay. There's a logic to that as well. The logic is that if you don't follow the rules of stores, the employee won't give you the merchandise. Okay, so I did it in under 11 minutes. Thank you for being patient. And hopefully this will catch us up on stuff that we would have missed. And we would have spent, obviously, much more time on this in large group, but hopefully this gives you the minimum that you need to understand it. Let me know if you have questions. Bye-bye.